The crystal chandelier in my parents' dining room cast warm light over the mahogany table, where 12 guests sat enjoying Mom's famous prime rib. Dad was in his element, holding court with his colleagues from Morrison and Associates, the mid-tier consulting firm where he'd worked for the past 15 years. At 52, Robert Hernandez was finally a senior partner, and he wore that title like a crown. "So this is the whole family," Dad gestured around the table with his wine glass. "My wife Carmen, our daughter Sophia, who just made partner at her law firm, and—" He paused dramatically, his smile turning cruel. "Well, we don't talk much about Michael here." I kept cutting my meat, not looking up. I'd learned years ago that reacting only made it worse. "Michael's our little entrepreneur," Dad continued, making air quotes. "Been building his business for 6 years now? Still lives in that studio apartment downtown, drives a 15-year-old Honda." The colleagues chuckled politely. "But hey, he's following his dreams, right?" Sophia jumped in, always eager to twist the knife. "Michael thinks he's going to revolutionize digital marketing or something. Very ambitious for someone who can't afford to take a girl on a proper date." More laughter. I took another bite and glanced at my watch. 7:45 p.m. Perfect timing. "What exactly do you do, Michael?" asked Janet Morrison, Dad's colleague. Her tone suggested genuine curiosity mixed with pity. Before I could answer, Dad waved his hand dismissively. "Michael has a small consulting business. Very small. He helps mom-and-pop shops with their websites or something equally modest. Digital transformation consulting," I said quietly. "I help companies optimize their technological infrastructure and data analytics capabilities." "See?" Dad spread his hands wide. "Fancy words for computer stuff. Michael's always been good with computers. Just never learned how to make real money from it." The truth was, I had learned. 3 years ago, I'd founded Apex Digital Solutions after spending 2 years analyzing Fortune 500 companies' digital weaknesses. My small consulting business now employed 847 people across 4 countries. Last month, we'd completed our largest acquisition yet, a data analytics firm that had increased our portfolio value to $3.2 billion. But my family didn't know any of this. They saw the old car, the modest apartment, the simple clothes. They didn't see the Swiss bank accounts, the holding companies, or the fact that I owned the building their favorite restaurant was in. I'd learned early that hiding success was easier than dealing with their expectations and demands. "The thing about Michael," Dad continued, warming to his theme, "is that he's never understood what it takes to succeed in the real world. Networking, relationships, playing the game." He gestured to his colleagues. "These are the people who actually matter in business." I nodded thoughtfully. "You're absolutely right, Dad. Relationships are everything." "Exactly. Take Janet here. She's been instrumental in landing some of our biggest clients this year. Real partnerships, real results." Dad raised his glass to Janet Morrison, who beamed with pride. What Dad didn't know was that Janet's biggest client this year had been secured through a referral from Apex Digital Solutions. We'd recommended Morrison and Associates for the implementation phase of a digital transformation we'd designed. The client, North Shore Manufacturing, had a $12 million consulting budget, and we'd steered $4.2 million of it to Dad's firm. "Speaking of relationships," I said casually, "how's the North Shore Manufacturing project going?" Dad's chest puffed out. "Brilliantly. Our biggest client win this year. $12 million contract." Janet led the pitch beautifully. "That's fantastic," I said. "They seem like a forward-thinking company." "Oh, they are," Janet agreed enthusiastically. "Very impressed with our digital strategy recommendations. Though between you and me, their previous consultants had laid incredible groundwork. Whoever designed their initial digital transformation roadmap was absolutely brilliant." I smiled and took another sip of wine. The conversation continued for another hour. Dad regaled everyone with stories of his professional triumphs, while occasionally taking shots at my failure to launch. Mom tried to soften the blows by mentioning how proud they were that I was still trying, which somehow felt worse than Dad's direct attacks. "The point is," Dad said, leaning back in his chair as Mom served dessert, "success isn't about having big dreams. It's about execution, dedication, and understanding how the world really works." He looked directly at me. "Some people figure that out in their 20s. Others." He shrugged. "Like I always say," added Uncle Roberto, You can't eat potential. Everyone laughed except me, and I noticed Janet Morrison. She'd been watching me carefully throughout dinner as if trying to solve a puzzle. At exactly 8 p.m. the doorbell rang. Who could that be? Mom wondered, rising from her seat. We're not expecting anyone else. Through the dining room archway we could see Mom opening the front door. A tall man in an expensive suit stood on the doorstep holding a leather briefcase. Good evening, Mrs. Hernandez. I'm looking for Michael Hernandez. I believe he's here for your family dinner. My heart rate didn't change, but I felt the familiar electric anticipation that came before a major reveal. I'd been expecting this visit. Michael. Mom called uncertainly. There's a gentleman here to see you. I stood up, napkins still in hand. Excuse me for just a moment. As I walked toward the foyer, I heard Dad say to his colleagues, probably someone about his computer business. Maybe finally getting evicted from that apartment. More chuckles. The man at the door was Thomas Wright, Morrison and Associates managing partner and Dad's ultimate boss. What my family didn't know was that Thomas had been trying to schedule a meeting with me for 6 months. Mr. Hernandez, Thomas said quietly, I apologize for interrupting your family dinner, but the Wellington Industries situation has accelerated. They're demanding an answer on the merger proposal tonight. I nodded. The timeline moved up? Significantly. They want to finalize the acquisition of Morrison and Associates by New Year's. Given that Apex Digital Solutions is leading the deal. He paused, glancing toward the dining room where my family was pretending not to eavesdrop. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. Actually, I said loud enough for the dining room to hear, let's handle this here. My family should know what's happening. I led Thomas into the dining room, where 12 pairs of eyes stared at us with curiosity and confusion. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Thomas Wright, managing partner at Morrison and Associates. I gestured toward Dad. Thomas, this is my father, Robert Hernandez, one of your senior partners. Dad stood up quickly, extending his hand. Mr. Wright. What a surprise. I had no idea you knew my son. Thomas shook Dad's hand politely, but his attention remained focused on me. Mr. Hernandez, Wellington Industries is prepared to offer $47 million for the acquisition, but they want the transition completed by January 15th. Can Apex Digital Solutions accommodate that timeline? The room fell completely silent. $47 million for what acquisition? Sophia asked slowly. Thomas looked surprised. The acquisition of Morrison and Associates, of course. Apex Digital Solutions has been negotiating the purchase for several months. Your brother's company is buying your father's firm. I watched the color drain from Dad's face as the implications hit him. I think there's been some mistake, Dad said weakly. My son runs a small computer consulting business. Small. Thomas pulled out his tablet and showed Dad the screen. Sir, Apex Digital Solutions is the third largest digital transformation consultancy on the West Coast. Annual revenue of $890 million. They employ over 800 people. Janet Morrison set down her wine glass with shaking hands. Wait, Michael Hernandez. You're the Michael Hernandez? From Apex Digital Solutions. I nodded. That's right. Oh my God, she whispered. You designed the North Shore manufacturing transformation. And the Pacific Bank digital overhaul. And oh my God, you've been behind half our biggest wins this year. Uncle Roberto leaned forward. What's everyone talking about? What's Apex Digital whatever? Thomas, clearly uncomfortable with the family tension but needing to complete business, pulled out a formal document. Mr. Hernandez, if you could review the final merger terms? Wellington Industries wants Apex Digital Solutions to acquire Morrison and Associates as part of their larger digital strategy implementation. I accepted the papers and scanned them quickly. The severance packages look fair. All current employees retained with salary increases. Dad, you'd be reporting to Janet as the new Northeast Regional Director, but your pension would triple. Reporting to Janet? Dad's voice cracked. Actually, Janet said softly, if this goes through we'd all be reporting to Michael. He'd be our SU. The silence stretched for 30 seconds that felt like an hour. Michael, Mom finally whispered, is this real? I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, then handed it to her. The screen showed my primary business account balance, $247,833,291. The small computer business has done okay, I said. Sophia grabbed the phone from Mom's hands, stared at it, then looked at me like she'd never seen me before. Michael, this says you have almost $250 million. That's just the business checking account, I said. Most of my assets are in real estate and equity holdings. Thomas checked his watch. I hate to interrupt this family moment, but Wellington Industries needs an answer by 9 p.m. I looked around the table at my family's shocked faces, then at Dad's colleagues who were staring at me with a mixture of awe and embarrassment. Tell Wellington we'll proceed with the acquisition, I said. Morrison & Associates will become the East Coast headquarters for Apex Digital Solutions. All employees retain their positions with immediate 20% salary increases. Excellent, Thomas said, making notes. And the timeline for your relocation to the corner office? I'll start Monday. But I want to keep things low-key. No announcements, no fanfare. Just business as usual. After Thomas left, the dining room remained silent for several minutes. Finally, Dad spoke. Michael, I don't understand. If you've been this successful, why didn't you tell us? Why live like a disappointment? I finished. Because every time I tried to share good news, you found a way to minimize it or make it about yourselves. When I got my first big client 3 years ago, you asked why I wasn't making more money. When I moved to the better apartment, you said I was probably overextending myself financially. Mom's eyes filled with tears. We were trying to protect you from getting your hopes up. No, I said gently. You were protecting yourselves from having to admit you'd misjudged me. Sophia set her fork down carefully. The North Shore project that made Dad look so good this year. I recommended Morrison & Associates for the implementation phase. They needed a smaller firm that could handle the rollout while we focused on the next client. How many of our successes this year came from you? Janet asked quietly. I pulled out my phone and showed her our client referral database. North Shore Manufacturing, Pacific Regional Bank, Sterling Healthcare System, and Meridian Logistics. About 68% of your annual revenue. Dad stared at the phone screen, then at me. You've been helping us? This whole time. I've been trying to. But every family dinner was another reminder that nothing I did would ever be good enough for you. I stood up and straightened my shirt. The irony is that tomorrow morning, you'll all go to work in a building I bought last month. Morrison & Associates' lease expires in January, so I purchased the entire complex to ensure continuity during the transition. The revelation hit Dad like a physical blow. He slumped back in his chair. Michael, Mom said, reaching across the table, we had no idea. That was intentional. I learned early that success made you treat me differently, either with suspicion about my motives or with sudden expectations for financial support. This way I could help the family business without the drama. Uncle Roberto finally found his voice. So when you said you were doing computer stuff, I was building the largest digital transformation consultancy on the West Coast while making sure Dad's firm stayed competitive. I picked up my jacket from the back of my chair. The merger will be announced Monday morning. Dad, you'll want to prepare your team for the transition. As I headed toward the front door, Dad called after me. Michael, wait. Where are you going? Home. I have a conference call with our London office in an hour, then I need to review the integration timeline for next week. But it's Christmas dinner, Mom protested. Can't business wait? I paused at the doorway and looked back at my family, really looked at them. Dad appeared smaller somehow, his confident swagger replaced by confusion and embarrassment. Sophia was still staring at my phone's bank balance display. Mom looked like she was seeing me for the first time. For 6 years, you've made it clear that my business doesn't matter because it doesn't fit your definition of success. Tonight, you called me the family disappointment in front of your colleagues. I shrugged. But business doesn't stop for family dysfunction. Michael, Dad stood up, his voice different now, uncertain, almost pleading. We didn't know. You didn't want to know, I corrected. There's a difference. Janet Morrison cleared her throat. Michael, if I may, your father talks about you at work more than you might think. He's actually very proud of you. I looked at Dad, who was staring at his feet. He just doesn't know how to show it, Janet continued. Robert always says his son is brilliant but too good for the corporate world. He worried you'd outgrow the family. Dad finally met my eyes. I thought if I kept expectations low, you wouldn't leave us behind. The admission hung in the air like incense. Dad, I said softly, I bought Morrison & Associates because I wanted to work with you, not away from you. The plan was always to bring you into Apex Digital Solutions as an equity partner. Equity partner? I pulled the merger documents from my jacket pocket. I'd been carrying them all evening, waiting for the right moment. 20% ownership stake in the combined entity. You'd be Chief Client Relations Officer for the East Coast Division. Dad's hands trembled as he took the documents. This says the position comes with a $2.3 million annual salary. Plus performance bonuses. The role plays to your strengths: relationship building, client management, strategic partnerships. Things I'm admittedly not great at. Sophia leaned over Dad's shoulder to read the papers. Michael, this would make Dad one of the highest paid consultants in the region. That's the idea. Morrison & Associates has excellent client relationships but lacks the technical infrastructure to scale. Apex Digital Solutions has the technology and capital but needs stronger client management systems. It's a perfect match. Mom wiped her eyes with her napkin. You planned all this? I've been planning this since my second year in business. But I needed to prove that Apex could succeed independently first. And honestly, I paused, choosing my words carefully. I needed to know that you'd work with me because you respected the business, not because I'm your son. Uncle Roberto raised his hand like he was in school. Can someone explain what just happened? Because 5 minutes ago, Michael was the family failure, and now he's about to become one of the most powerful people in the regional consulting industry, Janet said quietly. Michael, the North Shore project alone generated $4.2 million for us this year. If you've been orchestrating multiple projects like that. 14 major client relationships over the past 18 months. Total referral value to Morrison & Associates. $31.7 million in contracted revenue. Dad's wine glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. 31 million, he repeated numbly. The acquisition offer includes performance retention bonuses for all current Morrison & Associates partners based on client satisfaction scores over the past 2 years. Dad, your bonus would be $847,000. I could see Dad's mind working, trying to reconcile the son he thought he knew with the CEO standing in his dining room holding merger papers worth tens of millions of dollars. Michael, Sophia said slowly, if your company is worth billions, why do you drive that old Honda? Because it's reliable, fuel-efficient, and doesn't draw attention. Success doesn't require expensive displays. I looked around the room. Though I did upgrade recently. There's a Tesla Model S in the driveway if anyone wants to see it. That's yours. Mom gasped. We thought it belonged to one of your father's colleagues. Model S Plaid. Fully autonomous driving package. I shrugged. I figured it was time for something with better safety features. Thomas Wright chose that moment to knock on the front door again. Mom hurried to answer it, still wiping tears from her face. Mr. Hernandez, Thomas called from the doorway. Wellington Industries just called. They're prepared to fast-track the integration process if you can have your leadership team ready for a Monday morning presentation. I walked back to the dining room where my family sat in stunned silence. Thomas, I'd like you to meet the new Chief Client Relations Officer for our East Coast Division, I said, gesturing toward Dad. Robert Hernandez has 15 years of experience with Morrison & Associates and established relationships with all our major regional clients. Thomas extended his hand to Dad, who rose unsteadily to shake it. Mr. Hernandez, your reputation precedes you. The Wellington team specifically mentioned wanting continuity in their account management. Dad found his voice. They mentioned me? By name. They said Robert Hernandez was the most professional and reliable partner they'd worked with in years. I watched Dad's expression change as he realized that his professional reputation had been built, in part, on projects I'd orchestrated. The integration meeting is Monday at 9 a.m. in our downtown headquarters, I continued. Dad, I'll need you to present the client retention strategy to the Wellington board. Downtown headquarters? Sophia asked. The Morrison Building. 37th floor. I checked my watch again. Actually, it's the Apex Digital Solutions building now. We finalized the purchase last week. You bought the Morrison building? Uncle Roberto's voice cracked. Among others. We needed a proper East Coast headquarters for the expansion. Janet Morrison was staring at me like I was a fascinating puzzle. Michael, can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you choose to acquire us specifically? There are larger consulting firms you could have bought. I looked at Dad, who was still processing everything that had happened in the last hour. Because Morrison and Associates has something most large firms have lost, genuine client relationships built on trust and personal attention. My dad might not understand technology, but he understands people. That's worth more than all the algorithms in the world. Dad's eyes filled with tears. Plus, I added with a small smile, I figured it was time to stop hiding from my family and start working with them instead. The room fell silent again, but this time it felt different. Expectant rather than uncomfortable. Thomas Wright cleared his throat. If I may, there's one more matter to discuss. The Wellington Industries Board would like to meet the full Apex Digital Solutions leadership team before finalizing the acquisition. That includes you, Mr. Hernandez, as the new Chief Client Relations Officer. When? Dad asked. Tomorrow morning. Christmas Eve breakfast meeting at the Meridian Hotel. I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text. Within 30 seconds, Dad's phone buzzed. Check your email, I said. Dad fumbled with his phone, opened his email and stared at the screen. It's a first-class flight confirmation to Chicago. For tomorrow morning. Wellington Industries is based there. The breakfast meeting is actually a full partnership negotiation. If it goes well, Morrison and Associates becomes the exclusive East Coast partner for all their digital initiatives. How much is that worth? Sophia asked. Conservative estimate? $200 million over 3 years. Dad sat down heavily. Michael, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything right now. But Dad. I waited until he looked at me. When you introduce me to the Wellington team tomorrow, I'd appreciate it if you could skip the family disappointment routine. Dad's laugh was half sob. Yeah. I think I can manage that. I started toward the door again, then stopped. Oh, and Dad, the Honda is actually a hybrid that gets 50 miles per gallon. I bought it because I care about environmental impact, not because I couldn't afford better. As I reached for the door handle, Sophia called out, Michael, wait. Will you still come to family dinners? I turned back one last time. Are you going to keep treating me like a disappointment? No, Dad said immediately. Never again. Then yes. But next time let's have dinner at my place. The view from the penthouse is pretty spectacular. Penthouse? Mom whispered. 40th floor of the Meridian Tower. Same building where you'll be meeting Wellington Industries tomorrow, Dad. I opened the front door and stepped into the cold December air, leaving behind 12 people who would spend the rest of Christmas Eve trying to reconcile the Michael they thought they knew with the CEO who'd just changed their lives forever. My phone buzzed as I walked to the Tesla. A text from Dad. I'm proud of you, son. Always have been. I just didn't know how to say it. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, looking back at the warm light spilling from my childhood home's windows. Through the dining room window, I could see my family huddled around the merger documents, Thomas Wright explaining the integration process. Tomorrow morning, Dad would sit across from the Wellington Industries board as Chief Client Relations Officer of a billion-dollar company. For the first time in his life, he'd have the resources and authority to implement the client care strategies he'd always believed in but never had the budget to execute. I started the car and pulled away, already thinking about the integration timeline. There would be challenges ahead, helping Dad transition from employee to executive, managing Sophia's inevitable requests for legal work, dealing with family dynamics in a professional setting. But as I drove through the quiet Christmas Eve streets toward my penthouse, I realized something had changed. For the first time in years, I was looking forward to Sunday dinner. My phone rang as I pulled into my building's parking garage. Dad's name appeared on the screen. Michael. His voice sounded different, vulnerable but hopeful. Hey Dad. I just wanted to say, thank you. Not just for the job but for believing in me even when I didn't believe in you. I smiled, watching the city lights twinkle below my penthouse windows. Dad, you taught me everything I know about treating people with respect and building genuine relationships. I just applied those lessons to a different industry. Still, he said, I owe you an apology. A big one. You can make it up to me tomorrow. Show Wellington Industries why the Hernandez family builds businesses that last. When I hung up, I realized this was exactly how I'd imagined it would go. Not the dramatic confrontation or public humiliation, but the quiet moment when success spoke for itself and family relationships could finally be rebuilt on a foundation of mutual respect. The merger would close on January 3rd. By Valentine's Day, Morrison & Associates would be the most profitable regional consulting firm in the country. And for the first time in 6 years, I was genuinely excited about Sunday dinner.